Suratul Nisa, the women. On the first verse, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, it says, O mankind, be dutiful to your Lord, who created you from a single person, Adam, and from him, Adam, he created his wife, Hawa, and from them both he created many men and women. And fear Allah, through whom you demand your mutual rights. And do not cut the relations of the womb's kinship. Surely Allah is ever and all watcher over you. And give to the orphans their property, and do not exchange your bad things for their good ones, and devour not their substance by adding it to your substance. Surely this is a great sin. Among 176 lines of Surah An-Nisa, I read 2 lines. I wonder how many times can we read Surah An-Nisa every day of our lives? In every 24 hours of our moment every day, do we make this our organic act? The Holy Quran being the commandment to us by our Almighty Allah. I start with that inspiration because when we implement, when we write, when we breathe execution to what we do, nothing ever matters without some guidance. Di ba po? Every 5 o'clock in the morning, Suratul Subuh, what is that inspiration that makes me wake up aside from the sound of my baby in her cradle? Or my husband trying to wake me up because it is morning and it is time to feed him. It is about why we wake up and why we sleep. Ain't it not? It is about why we plan and why we execute. Ain't it not? Is it about just our relationship with Japan and arm and reform and laws and plans and IRRs? So ladies and gentlemen, my feeling is that ARMM has had so many plans in the past, and of course we are generous enough to benefit from women who have given us the best plans and laws in the world, starting from the Convention on the Elimination Against Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and other laws that Philippine leaders have given us, who represented us in Beijing in the 1970s, or was it 80s, no? Beijing, the CEDAW, the Convention, Beijing Platform of if I remember, 95 or 80s? 95, that was 1995. And of course, the Women in Nation Building Act and the ARMM Gender Code, this law, passed by the Armed Assembly, Ma'am Israel, on the 5th Assembly or the 6th Assembly. This is our Holy Quran, our Christian sisters, the Holy Bible. I was asking Sir Kudo if he had a copy of our Holy Quran. So this is for you, sir. And the gender code. But I think, of course, this is the most important law, the Holy Quran. But I think, Kaka Anisa, Naila, will you agree with me that the best implementing rule in your life is that which is in the center of you? In the center of us. Because ARMM, a beneficiary of billions of dollars since 20 years ago, 23 years na po tayo, month anniversary. 23 years, no, Sir Kudo? Okay. Do you think the difference between us and Japan? Japan faced one of the most tragic tsunami. Yes, Kudo? That was a tsunami? That affected the whole of Tokyo? Or how many towns? How many towns in Japan? Millions affected, yes? Without electricity. They were affected by a very life-threatening damage to property, to lives, to electricity. The world's most powerful country, Japan, faced with that was tsunami, right, sir? Tsunami. Did we ever face a tsunami, ARMM? That serious? That we lost millions of lives? No, we did not lose millions of lives. We lost evacuation to man-made war. That is the difference. Japan, not man-made. It is human nature. It is not human. Tsunami. ARMM, conflict and war, man-made. The difference is Japan hurdled the conflict or the human tragedy without so much of a media hype on how they survived. They are back on their feet. But we, ARMM, a lot of support has been given to us. And now we are again working on a support for our IRR, for our gender plans. But where are we now? The same, we are centuries old, the same as Japan. They also had the warrior race, the old cultures and traditions that they tried also to modernize. The conflict between the old and the new, the warriors and the new. And I think it's the same journey that we are having. How do we hurdle from the Bangsamoro warrior race that we are to one that is a warrior, that is a knowledge warrior, that is one that debates through the table, that convinces, that negotiates, that tries to do good, Sirat al-Mustaqim. Because that is the first verse we always say in every time that we pray 5 times. Sirat al-Mustaqim, Surah al-Fatiha. So as we plan, let us also think what is in between the plan, the niyat and the intention. Because for me, the difference between us and the Japanese is that our plans remain sometimes plans. Our plans in ARMM and the Filipino itself. Helen, this is not for RCBDW alone. It is for every line agency that is doing its planning. Yes, we demand 5% from you, DNR, from ORG, from every line agency. But where will you put that 5%? Again, look between your heart. Your wife, your child, your daughter, your evacuee neighbor, your vendors, your squatters who live in the ORG. Those are with families. And if we are sincere enough, we look not just externally, but internally. The welfare of our employees. You women who need to be organized. To be organized because anytime you need to make utang, where will you go? Your 15,000 is not enough. A teacher's salary is not enough. An employee in government salary is not enough. What more are relatives who do not have work, who are trafficked, who go to ACAT, but our ACAT, anti-trafficking offices, has still to be set up. A woman from Maguindanao journey into Tawi-Tawi to be sold in Sabah, quote-unquote, by an alleged restaurant where she has to work as a stewardess or a waitress, but that behind that restaurant, that front, behind it is something else. And she can't pay her rent in Sabah, so she has to do something else behind every night. A Bangsamoro selling herself to others because her country, her Bangsamoro nation, her armed government cannot provide for her. So, this is just one of my sessions with you, and I hope I'll be part of your journey because I'm your women's sectoral representative. I am also part of this ARMM, our army, hindi na our ARMM, army planning. And I'd like to share with you why it's important to plan. Aside from knowing the intention, our heart, where we bring our plans is important. Why we plan is important. This is an army plan. And this is just to show to RCBW and other line agencies that plans matter to convince. And plans matter because you need resources for 2013. So, just from the front page of this army plan, you see that the army is very serious in its army transformation roadmap, they call it, ATR. And I'm part of this planning procedure. Next. They would, part of your planning, of a line agency or government, is to convince. Who are we trying to convince? National Congress. It's important to know your audience. For me, your funder is not necessary. It's one of the big agencies to convince. But again, I start with niyat, and that's why I started with the Holy Quran. Is that if the people who are supposed to implement projects are not convinced, if the soldiers are not convinced that they no longer are war makers, they're no longer combat makers, they're no longer kill machines, then these plans are useless. So what we're telling the soldiers as civilians who are consultants to them is that what you're telling us is by You making that outward intention by your heart and mind, you believe yourself soldiers